Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Happy Pharmacomedy podcast. My name is Chris Bakley, and I'm your host. I'm really excited about today's episode. We're speaking with a full-time ambulatory care pharmacist who found a way to use his passion for improv comedy and to be able to teach it to others, pharmacists and other healthcare organizations, to better communicate with their patients. I feel like this is really helpful for a lot of you out there who maybe have a skill that you would like to train to others, possibly turn into a side business. So I really hope you get a lot of useful information out of today's episode. Really excited to welcome pharmacist Cory Jenks. All right, well, welcome to this episode of the Happy PharmD podcast. Today I have pharmacist Cory Jenks with me. Welcome to the podcast, Cory.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here today. What we'd like to do is just start with a quick bio about yourself, if you don't mind, for our listeners, kind of explaining, where you went to school, where you started career-wise, and where you are now.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Tucson, Arizona, where I currently live, and I made the obvious choice to go to undergrad in pharmacy school at the University of South Carolina. Now, as a proud Gamecock alum, I can say that it's the quote obvious choice for me as a happy alum, but I wanted to get out of state and experience a different place and pay out of state tuition, obviously. So I went out there for 6 years and I really enjoyed myself. And every time I'd come back home to visit, I had this longing to come back home. So when I graduated in 2011, I had lined up a residency at the VA here in Tucson. And so I did a general PGY1 residency in 2011 to 2012. And since that time, the residency was a general one, and it really didn't help narrow down what I enjoyed to do. I thought I liked AmCare. I enjoyed inpatient stuff. So I worked for a while as an ambulatory care pharmacist, did inpatient for a year, and quickly realized that I like AmCare. And so I've been an AmCare pharmacist since about 2014 in various roles, either in support of our clinics, where I was doing a lot of order verification, formulary management type things, counseling of patients. And now in my current role, I'm one of those fancy clinical pharmacy specialists in ambulatory care. And my role is actually, I'm the permanent new guy. So I just float around whenever someone's out on unexpected leave, maternity leave, vacation leave. I'm the pharmacist that the patient is not expecting to see. And so I've been in this role for about a year and a half now, and it's fun, and it keeps the variety up. That's my pharmacy career in a nutshell. I've done some per diem work in the retail world and at a community health center, but the main bulk of my time has been at the VA.
And how many years have you been at the VA again, you say?
Pushing 9. I did my residency in 2011, and I've been there ever since.
Okay,
well,
yeah.
My goodness, almost a decade.
I was going to say I remember when graduating from pharmacy school, I graduated in 2015. A lot of people either had residencies there or really wanted that. It was a very highly desired position for sure.
Yeah, it's a great place to work as a pharmacist. I think that there are pros and cons to working in a big federal system. And so I don't want to paint that the VA is just pharmatopia for anyone listening outside that's like not at the VA, like this guy's at the VA. It's really good, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff in and outside of our VA walls.
Gotcha. Awesome. And on top of that, you also have your own side business as well?
Yes. So I do improv comedy. So yesterday was my 7-year improv anniversary. I took my first improv comedy class in 2013 and just kept taking classes here at a local theater in Tucson. And interestingly enough, I found that the skills I learned doing improvisation had made me a more effective pharmacist. So we do a lot of listening, communication, learning how to deal with the unexpected, rolling with the chaos that pharmacy and what an improv scene can bring. And so in my improv comedy career, I performed, I ended up teaching, I coach. And so in this last year, I was kind of thinking, my pharmacy job is good, but what can I do with my other skills? And so I actually gave a CE talk this past year at my state association on applying improv for pharmacists. The University of Arizona here in Tucson actually teaches a section of improv to their first year students. That predates me. I can take 0 credit for it, except that I found out about it and was like, this is my specialty. I need to help facilitate that. So I've seen it in students. I see it in other pharmacists that I've had come through classes. My wife's a nurse practitioner. She's been through classes. So all of these things, I just couldn't ignore the utility of learning these skills. And so I gave the CE, and it has led to some opportunities in doing consulting with businesses and other healthcare organizations on teaching their employees the skills and tools of improvisation.
That's awesome. I mean, you would never even think of that as a side business. It's more like just kind of something that you enjoy to do, but then that's awesome. You kind of turned it around to a job or a business.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a cool world we live in. I'm talking to you on the over the internet about a side hustle in pharmacy. The internet and different interests and passions can kind of lead to almost anywhere you go. And this idea, like I started improv because I'd always liked comedy, and I had never pursued it because the smart thing for the audio, I am quoting myself, the smart, safe choice was to go to pharmacy school. And I did that, and then I got out and was like, oh, I need a hobby. And so this hobby has turned into a really interesting area of study of human nature, of soft skills. And so I'm working on growing it.
And I'm really interested or curious to hear, like, where was that, like, that moment that you realized you were using that kind of a lot in pharmacy in your own practice? Like, when did you all of a sudden the light bulb went off? How did you realize that?
When I started enjoying my job more. So you go to pharmacy school, you do a residency, I have some extra letters after my name that say I'm board certified. This is all great stuff. And we have these hard skills, these hard outcomes that objectively say, I am a good pharmacist. My wife's a nurse practitioner. I'm a good nurse practitioner. But then you sit in that seat for the first time and you get someone across from you that doesn't want to listen to what you have to say, or you have that first interaction with a provider or a nurse who is difficult to deal with. And you're like, I didn't learn this in pharmacy school. I didn't learn how to talk to someone who their wife just passed away yesterday. I'm supposed to talk about their diabetes today. How do I adjust on the fly in that situation? And so you have all this great knowledge, but how do you apply it to every individual person that's sitting in front of you? And in improv, I've now done thousands of improv scenes. So I've been thousands of people dealing with thousands of other people and characters in front of hundreds of audiences, both small and small. No, I've done some larger ones too. And so you learn to just roll with it and be more comfortable. And it was several months into my classes that I was applying this in my day-to-day work, and was like, wow, my teachers aren't kidding when we say how improv can make you a better communicator, a better human being, I think, to paint a pretty broad brush with that.
I mean, I think that's so true, though, because honestly, well, especially in your position now where you said you kind of rotate a lot in terms of you're the permanent new guy. I love that. Yeah. It feels like kind of the same thing in general in any kind of pharmacy. If you're seeing a patient in person and doing rounds, or in retail or wherever you're getting a call, it's a wild card every time. You have no idea the scenario, who you're getting on the phone, what the issue is, what their personality or their emotions are, if they're having a good day, if they're having a bad day. That makes so much sense. You need that extra skill for sure.
Yeah, and I really draw parallels between an improv scene and healthcare, because you have a framework you must work within. You only have a limited amount of time to make that connection. One of our biggest dissatisfiers in healthcare is the limited time we get with patients. So how can we make them trust us? How can we develop that rapport in an instant? Well, in an improv scene, I'm working with the people I'm across from on stage, and we have to immediately find out who, what, and where is going on, like immediately, or the scene is terrible. And at the same time, you're making sure that what you're doing between your scene partners also connecting with the audience that's watching that. And so learning that skill, like that brain muscle of how do I get to the important part while also developing a relationship with these strangers, is like what I do every day in pharmacy. And so it becomes sort of this cool skill of weaving in and out of the conversations and dealing with the very different personalities you see in healthcare.
Absolutely. And you said you also took some classes though as well, right? After your residency, or okay.
Yeah, so improv is something people are surprised when I tell them I go to rehearsals and you do classes. So improv there's a set of skills in improvisation that can be taught to like anybody. And when people say, oh, not me, I'm not funny, you don't have to be funny to do improv. And in fact, if you're trying to be funny while you're doing improv, you end up not being funny. So I took an introductory class. We learned some basic rules of improvisation. So if our listeners learn nothing, yes and are the two words that like are the basis of improv: agree and build together. So you learn things like that. And then as you advance through the curriculum, you learn different forms of improvisation. You learn different tools to be funny. But really great improvisers are smart, that are grounded in reality, and that can connect on an honest and have these really great honest connections.
That's so awesome. And I guess so once you started taking those classes and kind of built up your improv strength, and it sounds like to me, I mean, just speaking with you now, it seems like you already kind of had a strength in that already with your improv skills. When you made that transition to wanting to teach it, how did you begin that process to start your business?
Okay, so I've taught it for years at our theater in Tucson. And so that process was, the founder of the theater was like, I need more teachers. You're pretty, you've been doing this a while. You want to teach? And I was like, sure. So I've taught classes there for 6 years. I've helped run the comedy school and run the curriculum. The decision to try to turn it into a business, there's multiple factors. I think that I had my first kid in 2018, and I have a second one coming in about 5 months.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yes. This isn't just to plug my future kid and my current kid, but going and spending several hours at a theater to perform in front of 5 to 7 people I enjoy it, but when the opportunity cost is being with my family, it's like, well, it's tough to justify that to myself. My wife's really supportive, and there's times where she's like, you need to go to improv, or too annoying. And so finding a way to continue to do my improvisation and do it on more of my time and to be compensated for that is nice. I think another piece of it is there's, levels of progression of any skill, whether it's improv, it's guitar, it's pharmacy, like where do you want to take this hobby or this skill? And I'm not moving to LA or Chicago or New York to pursue a career in comedy and improv. It's a very rough life. It's a lot of attrition. And with a wife and a couple of kids, and I'm happy here in Tucson, we have our family here. Like, I don't feel that drive to get on Saturday Night Live. Like, it's okay. But I thought, like, how can I progress my skills and hone this craft in a way that I can do it from here, but also share it and help people in a positive way? And so having those factors and the understanding of how it helped me as a pharmacist, well, it was like, okay, let's pursue this in a way that I can help other healthcare providers. Because I know with the podcast, we're dealing a lot with burnout and dissatisfaction, and there's a lot we can't control, but improv is all about taking what happens and learning to dance with all that we can control, our reactions. And so that's the impetus for trying to spread this message to, one, provide an interesting avenue for something I've been doing for almost a decade, and two, well, let's make healthcare a little bit better along the way, and other businesses, and make everyone's customer service experience or any sort of experience improved.
Absolutely. So when you, I know when you had that, that idea and you started creating it, how did you start reaching out to others and kind of getting your name out there for the business?
So I'm still in the getting my name out there stage of my business. I'm pretty young in it, but I did reach out to Alex, and he's helped me take some steps. But what I did specifically is I looked at trying to find other people who've done something similar. And interestingly, when I was in pharmacy school my last year at one of our leadership events, there was a big convention. We had this gentleman come and do like a seminar, and he incorporated improvisation. And I went up on stage with him, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually emailed him. I was like, I saw you several years ago. You probably don't remember me, but I really like what you did, and I'm interested in doing it too. What did you do to get to where you are? And the same with another person that I was introduced to via a TEDx talk they did on humor in the workplace. And I just emailed him, and he actually met with me on the phone, and we talked for a half hour, and he gave me some tips. And so from there, it gave me some tangible steps to do. The CE I did for our pharmacy association was another step. Like, I wasn't looking to try to get a paid gig yet. I just wanted to do it. And at the beginning stage, you're going to probably have to do some stuff for free to get your name out there. And from that, I actually got my first paying gig. Someone was in attendance.
That's so awesome. I mean, that's such a big leap too. Like, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
I mean, for those who, I feel like that's a great, way to look at it, especially for those who want to start their own side gig or maybe have a passion with something, and just kind of, that's awesome that you could just reach out to someone that you had that experience with years ago, and they were willing to, give you 30 minutes of their time and walk you through, this is what I did.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then I guess moving forward with that, so now your aim is to help all other providers. Is that any kind of medical provider, or are you trying to focus on pharmacists primarily?
Well, I think I have a lot of pull with other pharmacists, being a pharmacist myself. And I think healthcare is a sector where, boy, I can't change your diagnosis, but I can make this experience suck less for you. And I think improvisation allows you to have those empathetic connections in the moment. And so I've really focused on trying to reach out to other healthcare providers, professions, groups, hospitals, etc. But I'm not limiting myself to healthcare. I'm doing a workshop next month for a local accounting firm here in town. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
I think that there's utility. Improv can be fit into a lot of different scenarios and groups. And whether it's learning better customer service skills, whether it's learning to build that team atmosphere. And improv is a team sport. You don't get to go out there and be Michael Jordan and carry the team on your back. You got to really share and give energy. And so that's where I'm I think I'll focus on healthcare, but I'm not going to limit myself to that.
That's awesome. And I know you said you're doing a seminar. Are you mainly doing it in person right now, or are you kind of combining that with online as well?
At this point, it's purely in person. And so I think improv is a really great thing live. If you try to watch videos of improv on the internet, it's just not as good as like a sketch from Saturday Night Live. It's just something where you feed off the energy in the moment. So right now it's purely face to face. However, if the opportunity arises and there's an interest in doing like a remote sort of consult, I'm yes and. That's like the whole basis of what I do. So I'm going to say yes to the idea and try to make it work.
And just to kind of switch gears for a minute, I know you're also pretty passionate about financial independence and financial freedom. If you kind of wanted to go over that a little bit for our listeners who are also kind of, while trying to find their passions, maybe feel a little stuck with the student loan or burnout just in their field, and they're kind of scared because of, can I afford to make a change and things like that?
Yeah, and so the personal finance thing, I was on an episode of You're a Financial Pharmacist back early January 2020 as you are listening to this, and it's something my wife and I really dove into as we were planning to grow our family. And finances was something that I always felt like, well, someone else knows that. I can't do that. But then it's like, to the pharmacist listening, incredibly complex chemical processes and drug interactions. You can figure out how to spend less than you make. So I really dove into books and blogs. There's this guy, Mr. Money Mustache, who's all about this thing called FIRE, Financially Independent Retire Early. It wasn't enough to make my wife and I go down that particular path because we were too deep in our careers and had made some other choices, but it really made us look at how we were spending our money. And so it was just a lot of self-education of podcasts, great variety of books and blogs. And I came across this idea of Coast-FI, and so financial independence, where you coast. So you save a lot early in your career and you let time and compound interest sort of take care of things as you go to retirement. So you put a lot in your retirement account early in your career. And then if you choose to make a change in your career, maybe you're following a passion, maybe you are going to part-time to spend more time with your kids. If you've already had that money saved, you're going to be able to look at it at not having been able to save as much in the moment with a little less trepidation. Now, for me personally, the whole financial independence, personal finance thing, I feel the pain of the students and other pharmacists out there with student loan debt and other types of debt. And it really took a hard kick in the rear for my wife and I to realize where our money was going. And we were actually doing good by most standards, but it was just a matter of, if you can make your needs less and being happy with what you have, you can put all of that money either towards your loans, towards saving for the future. And at this point, I'm student loan free, which, 9 years out, I'm pretty psyched about. And so we live we have a modest mortgage, and I think we have about the average of the American household's worth of expenses. And so as we grow our family, and if we choose to pursue different paths, it just provides a little bit more of a cushion and breathing room should we decide to make a bolder choice with what we pursue.
That's awesome. No, I mean, I feel like that just getting on top of your finances, personally, I feel that's a huge, thing to overcome. And you really have to do some serious evaluation about how you're spending your money and where how it's coming in and going out. Do you have like advice for those who maybe are interested in starting that, like where to begin, or I know you said you read some blogs and things like that. But it can get overwhelming for sure. Were there a couple of pointers where you kind of noticed, looking back at it now, that made it easier for you guys to do?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to personal finance, it's like I like to work broad to like the nitty gritty details. And so if you're looking for a really broad way of looking at your finances, I think Dave Ramsey has the 7 baby steps. Really great place to start. And from there, there's a family of books that he's written. I actually read a lot of For Dummies books. So like Investing for Dummies, the Stock Market for Dummies, that really helped me. And then as far as saving and investing, the J.L. Collins has a blog, and he has a book called The Simple Path to Wealth. If I could recommend one book on investing, I would say The Simple Path to Wealth is great. I think that oftentimes we make finances too complex, and boy, oh boy, it does not need to be that complex.
Yep.
And don't let some salesmen tell you differently. And if you're looking for another book on sort of the why of personal finance, I think that a book called Your Money or Your Life is something that really struck my wife and I, because it looks at the money you make and the things you buy, and it puts it into, how many hours do you have to work to buy that new truck, or how many hours do you have to work if you're going to buy X, Y, or Z. And it makes you think twice about buying the newest cool gadget or piece of technology. So those are 2 sources. Mr. Money Mustache is a blog. He's like a hardcore saver. If you read it, you will feel bad about how much you spend. I'm just going to warn you, but there's a great rabbit hole to go down, and it really gets you kicked up and inspired. And then as a pharmacist, Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, another great starting place as well. Absolutely. The podcasts and articles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. No, I mean, I love that whole comparison to time. I feel like a lot of people don't even think about that. Like that's a really interesting idea or concept for a book. I guess going back to the side hustle, for those who are kind of on the edge of beginning that process and transitioning, do you feel that, like, reflecting before you'd started your side hustle, do you feel that your lifestyle, do you feel kind of overwhelmed with your time to investing in that and working full time, and I guess and doing personal finance on your own? How do you kind of balance that?
So it's interesting. So we talk about financial budgets, but my wife and I meet every month and we do a time budget and a calendar budget. So we look at our calendar, look at our social schedule, other events we have going on, and then we fill in the people that we make sure we see we have a list of family and friends that it's like we see these people every month, because man, you will be amazed how, if you're in pharmacy school currently, you see your friends every day. Wait till you're working and you have a family, and you'll see them very rarely. So we have a time budget. I have as I'm looking above my screen here, I have a weekly whiteboard calendar. And so I chunk my time, and so Monday and Wednesday nights are my productive time. So if I'm going to work on my business, those are my time. Tuesday nights I've written analog fun. So I have a guitar that I don't touch enough back here that I try to play with. Even analog can mean watching a show with my wife. We don't watch much TV. And so really planning out your time and how you want to spend it, because you will be amazed if you give yourself an hour of focused time, turn off the phone, turn off the social media, etc., you can get a lot done. And so to me, I've always been a good time budgeter, so it wasn't as overwhelming. With a kid, there's a level of guilt, but if you are alone, or if you have a significant other, it's about getting on the same page and being okay with it. I'm at a place where my wife's a nurse practitioner in sleep and pulmonology, so we are very aware of the importance of sleep. So I don't do the midnight hustle thing. I work during kind of normal after hours, but the time thing wasn't super overwhelming to me. And my hope is that it becomes overwhelming. I want to grow my business to where I'm getting so much business that it is like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for everything. And then you have to reevaluate what you want to pursue there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I mean, my wife actually, shout out to her, she just started doing the whole whiteboard. We actually have the whole year on the wall. And it's quite a difference than looking at your phone or looking at like a tiny calendar and seeing what you have. It's nice to see the whole thing in perspective, and you really, if you don't write it down, you probably won't get to it. That's a great point, like to set aside time. And I'm just curious how you also, like you said, you have one expecting, you also have one little one as well. So and I also have a 1-year-old myself.
Oh, nice. Super fun.
Yeah. I know how important sleep is for sure. Or how hard it is with little sleep. How would you recommend, like, how are you you and your wife kind of take turns? Does she kind of respect that you're doing your side business, for those that maybe have kids and are trying to do this on the side?
So I have to give props to my wife as well. I married an incredible woman, and we have lots of talks about what we want our life to look like. And we talk a lot about something called like seasons of life. And when we first started dating, she was in nurse prac school. And so that season of my life was I went to improv like every night and got really good at it. Well, really good sounds, I'm not pompously good at it. Like objectively, like I learned these skills. And then we hit the season of life with our son, and she has some other side hustle things she wants to pursue. She's really into jujitsu and health and fitness a lot, as well as myself. But we are at a place where like the season of life is like nurturing and growing young babies and toddlers. And so I'm very conscious of the time I spend away. I was gone at an event at my alma mater a couple of weeks ago, and she was on board with it. We have a great family support system as well, so that helps things. But I also know that in a few years, it's going to be, she's going to want her time to, maybe when the kids are in school, to pursue some more of her ventures that she wants to. And so I do not take it for granted that I have a wonderful partnership. And I promise to the listeners, like I do lots of laundry and do lots of cooking and chores. Like we want to make sure our relationship is definitely symbiotic and amicable. I feel much guilt leaving, but we have a good understanding of each other with that.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like you have to be on the same page with your partner, and that sounds like you guys are absolutely in agreement to that. And, while we wrap up here, let's say someone who has already determined what they want to do as a side business, kind of like how you had an idea of what you wanted to do. And I know I really like the idea of reaching out to someone maybe you saw in the past and getting, picking their brain and just kind of how did you do it as well. Any other words of encouragement for those or advice for those just starting and they maybe have an idea, or even if they don't have an idea, where like the first steps, just to get that started, the process of a side hustle?
Yeah. First thing I'll say is you're not going to think you're like smart enough or good enough. And I still have a lot of those moments, but also understand that like everyone that's doing what you want to do didn't know everything that they know at one point. So don't feel bad if you like don't know everything. And so I think that when trying to choose like a different side hustle or an idea, look at what you already are good at and enjoy, because if you're trying to start from like scratch, like if I wanted to go be, a bowling instructor, like I'd have to learn bowling first. There's like a long learning curve of learning how to bowl to then go teach others to bowl. For me, it's like, what do I talk about when I'm not talking about like my job or my family? And I'm big into finance. I'm big into the personal health, which I talk a lot about. And I'm big into comedy. Like everything devolves, most people would say, into a comedic bit. So if you're already talking about it and can't stop thinking about it, like let's put it to good use and turn it into a moneymaker and something you could pursue on the side. And then once you hit that, look at other people that are in the space that you're interested in. And there's this idea, I was reading an article the other day about how you want to look at people that are like a level or two above you and not to like the moguls of comedy. Like, if I wanted to reach out to Jerry Seinfeld, he would provide no useful information for me because he's so far beyond my skill level and experience. But I reached out to people who are doing the things that I want to do, doing seminars and workshops and keynotes for large companies and organizations. And like they're very successful, but they're very accessible. Like compare yourself to yourself yesterday, not to anyone else today. That's the thief of joy is comparison. But look at people a little bit above you, and they're going to be able to provide much more useful information than people that are just like light years ahead of where you are today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. I love that. And in terms of finding those people that were not too like one or two steps above you, was it more like LinkedIn or word of mouth, or how were you finding those people?
So one of them was LinkedIn. I was able to connect via LinkedIn, and I found that to be a wonderful place to find. Like that's how I found the Happy PharmD. That's kind of how a lot of this whole process started. And so I've just reached out to people via LinkedIn. The email to the random workshop person from several years ago was a pleasant surprise to hear back from. So, but I think LinkedIn, like the whole point of that is to network and to meet other people. So use it to its great purpose. And I've been going to some local Chamber of Commerce events, which has been super uncomfortable for me as a siloed pharmacist. Like I've just worked for the man for basically a decade. So to go and see people doing the entrepreneurial things, running their own businesses, and then try to sell myself to them, it's been very intimidating, but it's also great practice. So I think that's another avenue to go as well.
No, that's awesome advice. No, thank you so much, Cory, for being with me on the podcast today. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And best luck to you and to all the listeners out there. Just find something you can't stop thinking or talking about, and that could be your next side hustle.
Awesome. And if anyone wants to reach out to you or to learn more about your business and what you offer, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, Cory Jenks, so CoryJenks, so LinkedIn there. I am on Instagram at Pharmacomedian and on Twitter at Cory Jenks PharmD. And sooner rather than later, my website will be up, improvrx.com. So there'll be a direct website for my business that you can reach out to me there. I think LinkedIn in this day and age is probably the easiest and quickest and most professional way to do it. And if you want to tweet me or Instagram DM me or however the heck that works, or find my website, I will happily chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cory. It was a pleasure having you. Well, thank you again for joining us today on the podcast. I really hope you got some useful information from my discussion with Cory today. I really thought it was some great advice in terms of if you're struggling to figure out what it is that you could do as a side hustle or for business out there, to really dig deep and reflect on what it is that you're doing when you're not a pharmacist. What is it that you find true joy and passion in, that you would consider yourself potentially an expert in, to provide your expertise and advice to other professionals out there, whether or not you could intertwine it into the pharmacy world, or it could be something completely separated from it. Also, I feel like the power of networking, it speaks for itself. It is so helpful to get out there and to speak with other professionals, whether or not in your field or even in other fields, especially when you're trying to go out there and do something entrepreneurial wise. It's very helpful to speak with others who have been through it, who are doing it. They can definitely provide super useful advice, and it's very helpful to get your name out there as well. And I also just wanted to redirect your attention quickly to our free web class that we are offering at the happypharmd.com/begin. Basically, this is going to focus on how pharmacists can escape burnout, get job offers regularly, and finally take control of your career. Again, it is completely free at the happypharmd.com/begin. I just want to thank you so much again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.